It's the question so many people want answered. What happened inside this home where acting legend Gene Hackman, his wife Betsy Arakawa, and their dog were found dead? We're exploring the top 5 theories that may explain the mystery in the desert, as some Hollywood stars take to social media with their own bizarre theories. We're On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Deputies in Santa Fe, New Mexico have said from the very beginning there were no signs of foul play in the death of acting legend Gene Hackman, his wife, and their dog. But they also said that their deaths were unusual and suspicious, and that has raised so many questions. We know that a preliminary autopsy didn't immediately identify the causes of death, and now we have to wait for the official autopsy to be completed and for toxicology tests to come back, and that could take weeks. We do have clues that can paint at least a partial picture of what law enforcement knows at this point. And one piece is that 911 call that was made by a caretaker who came upon Hackman and Arakawa's bodies.
Are they awake?
I have no idea.
Are they breathing?
I have no idea. I'm not inside the house. It's closed. It's locked. I can't go in. But I see them. She's laying down on a floor from the window.
Okay. Okay. Do they appear to be completely awake?
On the way?
Do they appear to be awake or alert?
No, it's not.
Okay. Okay. Did you hear them talk or cry?
No.
Okay. Okay. Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
Okay, my units are underway, okay?
When deputies arrived to the couple's home, they say they found Arakawa's body first. She was on a bathroom floor that was close to the front door. Deputies say that Arakawa had a black space heater near her head, and in a search warrant, the deputy wrote that he believed that heater could be a sign that Arakawa fell to the ground and the heater fell with her. The deputy also noted a prescription bottle and pills scattered across the counter. Deputies then found Hackman, 95 years old, on the ground in a mudroom. He had on his slippers, also had a walking cane by his side, and according to the deputy, he felt that Hackman looked like he had suddenly fallen. Then, in a closet, right near where Arakawa was found, there was a family dog. It was in a closet, in a kennel or pet carrier of some kind. There were 2 dogs on the property that were found alive. Both Hackman and Arakawa's bodies seemed to be decomposing, according to deputies, and that fit a timeline that was later released by the sheriff that Hackman's pacemaker recorded its last event 9 days before he and his wife were found.
The last event on the pacemaker was February 17th. Would that kind of give you a sign that's probably the day that he died? So they've been dead for about 10 days?
According to the pathologist, I think that is a very good assumption that was his last day of life.
Now, that Friday news conference was really the last bit of information we received from authorities. Just yesterday, the Santa Fe sheriff posted this on its Facebook page saying they don't have new information and no news conferences are scheduled, at least right now. So those are really the only public details that we have about what deputies are working with. But over the past week, several theories have been floated about what potentially happened to Gene Hackman, his wife, and the dog inside of their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So let's explore 5 of them. And as a disclaimer, these are all just theories. None of them have been confirmed by police. Hey, by the way, before we get back to this episode of On the Case, what are the stories that we cover here at Law&Crime prove? It's that life is unpredictable and having a great attorney matters. And that's why we bring in our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. This is a law firm with more than 1,000 attorneys and a history of winning. Just recently, they were able to secure $29 million for a bicyclist in Philadelphia, $2.7 million for a car crash victim in Florida, and in Georgia, $5.6 million. And that was after the insurance company was going to offer their client $0. So even if you don't think your case is worth millions of dollars, why not fight for what you deserve? File a claim today. Morgan & Morgan makes it so easy. You can do it with 8 easy clicks from your phone. Head over to forthepeople.com/OTC and start your claim today. You can see we have a link in the comments section. The first theory is that Hackman, at 95 years old, died of either a heart attack or natural causes, and Arakawa then went to the bathroom to take medication, had an episode, and passed away. Deputies took thyroid medication, Tylenol, and a blood pressure medicine that is called dilitazem from the home as evidence. Now, the sheriff wouldn't say who the medicine was prescribed to and whether it was the medicine that was listed in the search warrant as scattered on the counter of the bathroom, citing HIPAA laws. According to the Mayo Clinic, dilitazem is taken to treat issues like chest pains, and adults typically take it as scheduled during times of the day. Another theory is that Arakawa had a medical event and died first, and then Hackman, who was found with his sunglasses and a cane by his side, would have gone to go get help before having an incident of his own and passing away. Arakawa has been described as a caretaker for the older Hackman, who is 95 years old. This week we spoke with medical examiners who say an autopsy will help determine that timeline based on the decomposition of Hackman and Arakawa's bodies. In the search warrant, Arakawa's arms and feet were noted to have signs of mummification, and Hackman's body was said to be in a similar state, but that term mummification was specifically used for Arakawa. The third theory is one that authorities have said from the very beginning that there are no signs of, and that is foul play. But the sheriff has said that nothing is being ruled out. Deputies noticed that there was no forced entry into the home, and neither Hackman nor Arakawa showed signs of trauma on their bodies. But that hasn't stopped the internet theories from swirling. Just look at this post by actor Randy Quaid. Remember him from Christmas Vacation and Independence Day? He put this out on X, and again, this post is not founded or confirmed, factual by any means. Quote, Gene Hackman and his wife are murder victims. Some scumbags did it and staged it. Stop talking about the films he is in. This is how they get away with murdering famous people. Fake news starts generating film clips. How is it possible? I know at least 6 people who died, like Carradine, Hackman, and Ledger. Now, Carradine is David Carradine. He was an actor, director, producer. He died in 2009 when he was 72 years old. His body was found in Thailand, where he was filming a movie there. Authorities say he took his own life. Now, Ledger, that's Heath Ledger. He died in 2008. He was 28 years old. That actor found in a New York hotel room, and authorities say an accidental overdose is what caused his death. And we'll say it again, just to be clear, there is no evidence that has been put forward to show that Hackman, at 95 years old, was the target of a murder. The sheriff, again, said there were no signs of foul play, but he hasn't ruled anything out. Another theory that the sheriff debunked on Friday that came as a surprise to many was carbon monoxide poisoning.
Just today, I spoke to Dr. Jarrell, the pathologist from the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator. This was at 2:00 p.m. today. She advised that there were several tests that were submitted to be expedited. She revealed to me the following information. Both individuals tested negative for carbon monoxide.
Deputies say when they arrived at the home, they called the fire department and the gas company to check the house, and they didn't find traces of CO in the air or a CO leak in the house. A key part of this investigation will also be the cause of death of the dog that was found dead in a closet in some sort of dog carrier. 2 other dogs were found alive on the property, but it's not clear how that one German Shepherd passed away. It is possible that Arakawa and Hackman died and that dog was unable to get food or water for days, and that caused the dog to die. The sheriff in his Friday news conference, which lasted for roughly 20 minutes, was asked about a planner that was taken as evidence from the Hackman home, according to this search warrant. The sheriff wouldn't say whether there were more events written into that planner beyond the day that Hackman and Arakawa were believed to have died. There's no evidence that they would have died in a planned event, but again, the sheriff has said nothing is being ruled out. Joining us now is Mary Jumbelik, forensic pathologist and former chief medical examiner. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. I know this story probably in your world has a lot of buzz, and many people are trying to figure out what happened. Based off the facts that we've been given thus far, and I know there's still a lot more that we have to learn, What theory does your mind go to as far as what potentially happened to Gene Hackman, his wife, and this dog?
Well, of course, as many people have speculated, you want to rule out a common poisoning scenario like carbon monoxide in the home, because that would be a threat to any living people that, might come in contact. So it seems as if investigators took care of that right away and ruled that out, which is very important. I've heard, the theories about Gene Hackman perhaps collapsing first and then his wife falling in the bathroom. And any of that is a possibility, but I do want to emphasize that the investigation is such a critical part of this. Whenever we find someone down in their home, we have to say, well, does it look like they went down at night or in the day? Were the light switches on or off? Was the coffee pot on? Did they make the bed? Had they slept in it? So was it morning or night? When did they pick up their mail? Did any of the habits that they do, like go to the bakery perhaps once a week, did they miss a doctor's appointment? So when we're trying to figure out when they died, that's pretty critical to get all of that investigative information. Did the dog make any efforts to get out of the crate? Or was it just, lying there, peacefully? What kind of pills were they? I've heard high blood pressure medication, perhaps. Were there any cameras on the property? When did they last use their phone? All of that is just so critical to piecing together what perhaps their final days were like in their lives in order to interpret what we find at the autopsy. Perhaps both had natural disease. We know Gene Hackman had heart disease. He had a pacemaker. But I don't know much about the health of his wife, and that would be important to know as well.
A couple of the theories that we've heard kind of similar on the lines of what you've been talking about, where the idea that Gene Hackman may have passed away first and then his wife may have had an event in the bathroom, but then also the possibility that maybe his wife passes away first for whatever reason in the bathroom, and then Gene Hackman at 95 years old, he had a cane with him, he had sunglasses, perhaps he was going to go find help. That also has been a possibility that's been floated. How likely is it through an autopsy? And I know it's been talked about some body decomposition on both people, but the mummification specifically on his wife is what was mentioned in the search warrant. How likely is it that an autopsy can determine who died first?
I think it's going to be very difficult, although that's a question that we always look to find the answer for. But it's difficult because days now have gone by. So we're not talking a matter of differentiating, hours, perhaps. We're talking days of trying to understand this. And so to tell the difference between 8 days or 9 days is going to be very, very hard. So there may be other clues, like who was last spoken to, by anyone. I know they're very reclusive people, so perhaps they didn't have a lot of contact with the outside world, so that may be even more difficult to determine. In terms of, is there anything in their gastric contents that might have indicated they had breakfast or dinner, or when, and did they eat the same thing or different, or was that hours apart or not? Some of that, might be helpful, but I think it's going to be very difficult.
Now, from the very beginning, authorities have said there were no signs of foul play, but it's also something that the sheriff said that he's not going to rule out. And there's people out there that'll say, this definitely had to, because that's just where their minds go in this world, that it had to be a case of foul play. Is there anything that stands out to you that could raise that possibility, at least as far as what we know right now?
Well, I think as medical investigators, we always have to consider that. It has to be in our list of options when we're looking at a scene and a sudden death. But nothing stands out. It seems like the police were thorough in their search. There's no forced entry into the home. It doesn't look like there's been anything taken. There doesn't appear at first glance to be any violence on the bodies, any trauma. So it doesn't suggest it. But of course, it would be something to rule out and make sure that when the autopsies are done, they carefully document any internal injury or any signs of poisoning or anything like that. But it seems low on the list right now.
And going back to the carbon monoxide being ruled out, and that came as a surprise to a lot of people, because typically when you just hear the facts of people found dead in their home and no signs of forced entry, you think that that's a real possibility. Are there other toxins that potentially could be in the air that could cause the deaths of people, like beyond just carbon monoxide?
Well, certainly in like sort of an industrial situation or even a factory situation, you could consider that. You could consider closed spaces, but they were in a ventilated home, and there's no indication of any aroma or smell. And now you have 3 bodies to test, the dog included, for the possibility of anything untoward. So I think carbon monoxide would have been the major thing to rule out right away, and they did that.
There's a question that caught my ear when the sheriff was giving his news conference on Friday, and it was about this planner that was taken from the house as evidence by deputies. And the question was there anything beyond the particular date where Gene Hackman and his wife were found dead in that planner? The sheriff wasn't able to go into detail in that as of yet, but typically in your line of work, what type of clues can a planner give in trying to figure out the detailed circumstances surrounding the deaths of people?
Well, certainly if someone has appointments and something on their calendar, you would expect that they anticipate to live to that date. So that's an indication of, sort of future planning, future thought of what they're going to do. So it does, indicate that. But also the past dates can be important because did they show up for those appointments or not? And unintended. If people are thinking in lines of, double suicide, which, would be something also to rule out, it doesn't feel like that in the sense that they're found in 2 different rooms. It seems like he collapsed from the description of the scene. It seems like she collapsed. And so there's no indication that they had intended this to happen.
In your experience, and I know you're primarily when it comes to autopsies, it's on human beings, but this dog is kind of fits into the clues that we're looking at here. I know that there are theories that the dog, and we don't know as of yet how the dog passed away, but if it was from starvation, dehydration, you would assume that it was just left in that crate in the closet, unfortunately, for days at a time. What other possibilities could there be that caused the death of this dog? And how long, I guess specifically, does it typically take to get an autopsy on an animal performed, as opposed to, in the case of Gene Hackman, it could be weeks until we find out?
Right. Well, certainly with the humans, the autopsy itself might not take that long. The physical incisions and looking at the internal organs and checking the bones for any fractures. But the toxicology part of it, where they're going to take, tissue and blood and look for any, poisons or chemicals, that might take longer. Certainly for the dog, it would need a necropsy by someone who's familiar with doing that. So in New York, we might ask Cornell veterinary to help us out to do an autopsy and tell us, what they have found. Because in this case, with the 3 bodies being deceased, I think you want to go as thoroughly as you can into the cause.
How unusual is it for a preliminary autopsy not to determine the cause of death in this case? Like in this case, we're going to have to wait for the official autopsy to come back.
Well, of course. In this case, it is more than one person is dead in the same home. So there's an extra level of scrutiny. Otherwise, a 95-year-old man with a heart condition and a pacemaker who collapses and there's nothing suspicious and there's no trauma on the body, that result may come back very quickly. But now you have his wife also deceased, much younger, unknown to me anyway, medical history, and a dog also now in the environment deceased. So investigators are going to be careful on this one, and they should be.
When it comes to the pacemaker, beyond just the last time that it registered a heartbeat from Gene Hackman, what more information could a pathologist learn from the data typically coming from a device like that?
Well, again, I don't know in this particular case, but sometimes data is stored so that it might record events that it happened. That very well may be. They could get that data from the company. I think important to realize that, perhaps he complained of something, chest pain, irregularity, something, and maybe his wife went into the bathroom to try to get medication to ease it, and then she, either fell or stumbled or, had a heart attack herself. I have had several cases in my career where one family member has died and another family member, upon hearing the news of the death, collapses. So that by itself is not impossible.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's kind of interesting thinking of just what potentially could happen, kind of filling in the blanks as it goes on. I know over the last couple of days, we've talked to former pathologists, medical examiners, and each one has talked about the backlog in many offices when it comes to getting autopsies performed. Gene Hackman, one of the great actors of all time, there's a lot of public interest in this case. In your experience, how likely is it that those high-profile cases might get a little bit of, I don't want to say preferential treatment, but move to the front of the line to just expedite the process of giving the public some answers?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say it's because of his notoriety as much as the unusual circumstances here. I mean, yes, Gene Hackman, a fabulous actor, award-winning career, beloved by many, but I don't think that by itself is the only reason this is getting attention. I think the attention is there are 3 deceased individuals, a dog, his wife, himself, all in the same home. Let's figure out what happened to this. So it does deserve that extra level of scrutiny for that reason.
And for you, when I know the sheriff has called this an unusual case, has called it a suspicious case, I guess in your experience, how unique is this story that we're following right now, beyond the fact that it is Gene Hackman and you kind of take the celebrity out of it, but just to have these 2 people in separate rooms, found dead, much different ages, the dog, all these different kind of details that have been laid out and still no answers a week later?
Well, I don't know about the no answers part of it, but the circumstances part of it has happened in my career multiple times. And it requires a detailed evaluation, rule out homicide, rule out foul play, rule out any untoward action that they may have taken on themselves, and then delve into what diseases they had that may have contributed to this sudden demise. Once I heard the dog was in the crate, it began to make, sense that if they had both died, the dog was not going to be able to survive, without food and water for so long. But again, I think it does happen, and investigators need to get to the bottom of it to reassure people.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out. I know no new information today or yesterday from law enforcement, but we'll see what more comes forward. Mary Jumbelik, thank you for taking the time to be with us. A great perspective as we all kind of dissect this story that continues to develop out of New Mexico.
You're welcome.
As investigators continue to search for answers at Hackman's house, the people of Santa Fe, New Mexico are honoring this couple that made their community their adopted home. This is what the front page of the website of Pandora looks like. That's a luxury home goods store in Santa Fe that was founded by Arakawa, and it reads, "In loving memory of our co-founder, business partner, and dear friends, Betsy Arakawa and husband Gene Hackman." We'll continue to follow this story. I know so many of you are interested to see the direction that the investigation goes next. For On the Case, presented by Law&Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.